Hi, my name is Rose Troche, and I am the writer, director, producer, and editor of Go Fish, which won the Teddy Award in 1994, so way back in the day. And I want to wish the Teddy Awards a happy 30th birthday, and I wish I was there for the party. I could be there if you flew me out. So, and my little Teddy Award also says, happy birthday.
Well, Rose, thank you very much for doing this interview with us. Thank you very much for bringing the teddy.
Yes, I think this teddy actually has nipples, so that's, I just noticed that. That's very cute.
Well, we are Queer Film Awards, so we also have all genders in there.
Must have your nipples.
Yeah, well, you won the first Teddy Award in 1994 with Go Fish. Back at that time, new queer cinema was quite new still, and that was the first movie that actually depicted female homosexuality in a movie, in a big movie. It won the award. How did the movie come to happen? How did you come up with the idea? What was the story behind it?
Go Fish really came out of activism at that time. Like I was in ACT UP, I was in Queer Nation, as was Guinevere Turner, and I was also in film school. So I really wanted to kind of further the idea of like lesbian visibility, which we had, we did like kiss-ins, we did, we were trying to, make ourselves more visible, and Go Fish definitely came out of that that philosophy. And as a matter of fact, I think if it weren't for ACT UP and Queer Nation, I don't know that film would have gotten made, because a lot of the people who helped make that film and worked on that film were all people that I met, in ACT UP and in Queer Nation. So it really kind of was a film that was born out of activism.
How would you describe the atmosphere at that time, the atmosphere of activism and the surrounding in which the movie came up?
I think it was very funny, because I was talking to Bob Hawke last night. Bob Hawke, I'm sorry. I was talking to Bob Hawke last night, and we were talking about sort of the early '90s and just losing so many friends, and I think there was something about telling a simple story about the simplicity of love between two same-sex people that felt needed at the moment, and I think it definitely, it's such a fun and hopeful movie, but I think it was born out of a sadness of losing people and of not understanding why the world wasn't looking or paying attention when we seem to be losing so many people. And so I think it was really about not wanting to take it anymore and wanting to be seen and heard. So it really came out of that.
So would you say that the gay rights movement in the early 90s, the new queer cinema and all that, is also a movement that came to be so strong because of the AIDS crisis?
Oh, I definitely think so. I think we didn't really realize how much kind of we would be ignored in the world. How much health reform wouldn't happen, how much it took a very long time in this country, in the United States, for even the president at that time to acknowledge the fact that there was, that AIDS was something that was devastating the community. It took forever for them to change there were the specifications around how a woman can become HIV positive. What would manifest itself in one's body. All of these things, nobody was being, I think we were shocked at how ignored we were, and that was a real wake-up call. But so yeah, I think a lot of queer cinema at that time was really coming out of like a realization of really being a second-class citizen. I think for a lot of, I think especially for a lot of white gay men, it was really kind of one of the first times in their lives that they were like, oh, we're absolutely second-class citizens in this world. And I think that anger fueled a movement and fueled definitely the two are the two intersect. I think about all the films of that time, you know, like Poison and Swoon and Gregor Rocky's early work, you know. I think all of that was impacted by what was happening in the world, and particularly what was happening in the LGBT community.
But you were saying that it was mainly something that focused on gay white men. How was it with the lesbian visibility in that crisis?
I think, you know, it was always, it's a very funny thing because, you know, we were there as allies and you know, we were certainly not losing people in numbers like the men were, you know. And I think that you know, in wanting to be there for the gay community, I feel like, you know, there was a sense of our own invisibility that was being brought to the surface as well. And yeah, I definitely Go Fish was born out of something like that. You know, everybody wanted to be seen. Everybody wanted their voice to be heard.
And you were saying that you were in. that's okay. You were saying that it was like being an ally. Would you also say that the queer community got united in that time? Would you, or maybe even say that the queer community actually started in that time?
I don't know if it started in that time, because I think there are pockets in history where there was a queer community in various places. I mean, in Germany for sure, and you know, in parts of the U.S. But certainly we did unite around. We had to show the world that we had numbers. You know, it was very important. It was very important for us all to be on the streets, for us to be getting arrested, for us to be out there, for us to be allies. I think it still is, but you know.
And now looking back at this context, how would you place your movie in this situation? Like, what would you say is the relevance now looking back 20 years later of your movie?
I think at the time, you know, there wasn't a film that was just simply a love story that was not fraught. I mean, you know, there was I suppose there was Desert Hearts and Claire of the Moon, like that were the predecessors, I think, of Go Fish. But we really felt as though the community that we were from, that kind of urban, sort of young community, was not being represented in the same way. You know, people with roommates, people with, like that kind of, the way in which we make our own families had not been represented, and Go Fish is definitely of that vein, and of, you know, like, I mean, as was sort of the L Word, you know what I mean? It was like there is something about uniquely queer about the way in which we create our families around the friends we make, you know. And I mean, I have friends who are everyone from Go Fish. I mean, I just have friends who have been my friends for, you know, 20 plus years, and it's so uniquely, you know, something that we do in our community. But and that was I think one of the first times that was really represented in the film.
But does that mean that one of the aims sort of was to show ordinary queer life? Yeah.
To demystify it, to not show it as sort of lauded or depraved, you know. It was really about showing how we exist in a real way. I mean, you know, like, I remember a lot of people thinking that the film was documentary, and it's, you know, it's definitely not a documentary film at all. But you know, people were plucked from our lives, you know. I mean, it's a film of it's us and our friends. And if they weren't our friends, by the time we were done with the film, they were our friends, you know. But, you know, we definitely wanted to make a movie by, for, and about women, you know, even though there were quite a few men who worked on the film. But that was very important, for us to kind of hold ourselves up in that way.
Well, and later the L Word came out, which also was extremely important. I mean, it was on television, at least in Germany, it was very important. I actually don't know how it was in the United States, but in Germany it was a very important series because it was the very first time that lesbian life was shown on television to that expand, like everyday life.
Right.
So how would you say was this next step? What was the way to get to this next step to do a series about that?
Well, I think each piece carves the way. I think that without Clara the Moon and without Desert Hearts, I don't know that Go Fish would have been made. Without Go Fish, would High Art have been made? Would and et cetera, et cetera. Like we're all part of some kind of we all take our place in history, and we're all sort of eroding some kind of bias, I believe, with the work. So all of these pieces kind of led up to the L Word, and the L Word is my goodness it's less sort of real life and a little bit more aspirational. You know what I mean? It's not like every gay woman who walks in a room and sees another beautiful woman ends up getting to have sex with her. Like if it's the L Word world, then yeah, you do. So it's a little bit more, it's a little more aspirational than, and I think that's why I think that's why men and women and straight women watch the show. I mean, the women had power, they, Bet could yell at her boss and lose her job and get a better one. Excuse me, 1 second.
No problem.
That's my doorbell. I got a package.
Well, that's nice. Is it a teddy bear?
No, it's screeners because it's award season. So I get all I get movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So anyway, with the L Word, I think that the L Word paved the way for things like Orange Is the New Black. I think that and the things that happen on Transparent. I think Queer as Folk paved the way for the L Word. I mean, really paved the way. That show definitely paved the way for the L Word. And everybody sort of makes their contribution and erodes this sort of mountain that's in the way of progress. And I think it's wonderful that everything can take its place in history.
Well, just a few years back, Concussion came out. You were the producer of Concussion, and well, that was sort of the next step, I had the feeling, because in that movie we have a lesbian couple, and you could say they made it. I mean, they have a good income, they have a nice house, they have friends, everything. They have actually sort of a happy life, but they are not really happy in their relationship. The movie, well, focuses on the relationship problems. Does that sort of show that homosexuality is accepted now? It arrived at the center of society? It is there, they made it?
They're definitely a middle-class family. I mean, they're definitely like an upper-middle class family. I think, and Stacey will speak, I think, really, it's a very good question, and I think it's a really good question to posit to Stacey when you speak to her. But I think that there is that notion of first, I think there's the malaise of marriage, of being married for decades and sort of, looking at the same person and sort of swallowing what is your needs. And I think that's a universal thing in all marriages. I mean, you have to work hard to keep a marriage going, to keep it fresh, to be present and aware. And, whereas like 20 years ago, we used to talk about like lesbian bed death. And it's not really just a lesbian thing. We understand that now. It used to be that we just took all of our self-loathing and like called it, like put labels on it and made it our own, And I think that, I think what's very different about Concussion is that it's telling a story of a marriage. It's telling a story of, it's no longer like just a gay story. I think that it's really much more a story about that class, that the longevity of a relationship and what you do with it. And I think as far as the queer part, I think there is in that world, when you're alone in that world of that middle class world, and you're accepted by everybody, but you still feel different. You still feel like you're working towards a validation, and that is the underlying, I think, tension in that film, is that there's still the gay couple that lives next door. You know, she still can't talk to people about her marriage. You know, she can go so far with her friends, but I don't know how much she can reveal. And so she turns inside herself and then goes to these other extremes to fix a problem that she's feeling, which is, the result of a midlife crisis in the middle of a, mid-marriage crisis. All of it's sort of, it's a perfect storm in that film. And yeah, it is like that kind of narrative would not have been told before. I remember seeing High Art and thinking, oh my goodness, this is like a story about artists and they're queer, and people who change the genre or change the way those stories were told. It used to always be about being queer first, then, et cetera, then plot twist, but it was really sort of wonderful and refreshing once narratives began, and talk about like looking back at the Teddy Awards and everything, when narratives began just being like, oh, I don't know, we're just a couple and these are the problems that we're having, when sort of queerness got, like kind of went to the like C storyline, but wasn't like the A storyline.
Well, I have the feeling that this is sort of a tendency in queer filmmaking at the moment, that the focus shifts away from the problems you have because you are queer to problems that people have that are queer, like long-time relationships, for example, in your movie, also in the movie by Ara Sachs that you released a few years ago. Well, I have the feeling that this is one of the tendencies, at least in the Western countries.
Yeah. Yes, I definitely think that narratives are, I mean, everything that I write that is queer is, it's part of the storyline, but it's not the main story of it. It's really kind of like, I think also a lot of us are getting, a lot of people who've made movies sort of back in the day, we're all at an age where those are not the stories that we're interested in telling. We're interested in telling stories about, like, what it's like to not have domestic partnership, like Ira's movie, what it's like to live apart after a bunch of years or not be validated in the world, for like practical reasons, and those are the different stories that are being told now. And I think the stories of like origin stories are being told more in the trans community, like you see stories of like becoming, of transition, and those narratives are there because it's the beginning of showing the world who you are, and a lot of the reasons why we make our work is to make people understand that, to not villainize us, to not, to humanize us, to say like we are not to be feared. We're just, we're to be loved. We're as complex and as different, and wonderfully so. And that's the reason why most of us make work. And that's what Fish was. It was really to just be like, we're just ladies.
Well, you've been making movies for a very long time. What does queer filmmaking mean to you? Would you say there is something like queer filmmaking?
There's definitely still a community, and there's definitely, yeah, I mean, I still love a good gay festival. I still love, like, appreciating queer work. I love that the Teddies exist. I really do. I think that it's amazing, and I feel so happy and validated. My goodness, no one throws a bigger and better party. Wow. Nobody. I mean, I just, Mardi Gras, like, I don't know, like, it's such an amazing celebration and such a special thing, and I think there's still a community, but I feel like it's not as intensely focused as it was, because everybody has their own interests in all different places. You know what I mean? Like, I'm making virtual reality work right now, and taking on different subject matters, but there is still that queer community that's really beautiful and that I really appreciate so much. Like I love Outfest and and Frameline and like I just it warms my heart, But I do think that there are a lot of people who ask, is this necessary anymore? And it's a question, I love a big gay party, so I'm always like, yes, it is.
But apart from the parties, how would you answer this question? I mean, it is a good question.
You mean, is it necessary anymore to have queer festivals and to have LGBT? I still think it is. I think that sometimes we look at these things from the big cities, from the coasts, as we say here, and I don't know that that's how the rest of the world still is. I think that we're a little bit ahead of ourselves, thinking that it's all done now. It's all like, you can get married and blah, 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 and it's all done. Like, everybody pack up all your queer complaints and leave the building, But it's really not. There are a lot of people, and it's always surprising to me to still meet people, like almost always recent transplants to like one of the coasts. Like I either meet people in LA or New York who recently moved to the big cities who will be so grateful for work that's come out or talk about how when they were growing up the L Word was the one thing that they would like secretly watch and like made them feel like they weren't alone. And as long as those stories exist, I think that we're still doing good work, and I still think that there's a reason for a presence of a queer festival. I think as long as there's like, some person who's coming out, whether they're a teenager or they're 70, to have a place to go to watch their first gay movie, to be around a community is still powerful and is still important.
Mm.
So I'd say at the moment, yeah, I still see a reason.
Well, we already talked a few times about the Teddy Awards, so how was it actually for you to win the Teddy Awards? How did it feel? How did you react? Shocking. Why?
Yeah. I mean, Go Fish was such a whirlwind, and it was, I didn't even know what was happening. I was too young and naive to even know sort of what the beauty of everything that was happening. So a lot of that had to be kind of in retrospect, where I, kind of took it in and was like, that was amazing, or that was like something that's rare and not going to happen over and over again in your life, But I think I just was like, I mean, my goodness, just filled with such joy, and I was so proud, and there was nothing like getting on that big stage and just being like, oh my God, it just, it's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming.
And would you say that the Teddy Award had an impact on the movie and the way the movie was perceived after the festival?
I'm certain that it did. I'm certain, I think anytime you get a big award, you become an award-winning film. And it's wonderful to be the maker of an award-winning film, It's absolute validation. It's, I think people, and I think especially over the years, I think people have come to really look at the films that have won the Teddy and, and kind of say like, oh, I'm going to pay attention to that film. That film won this wonderful award. So yeah, I think it definitely kind of put a stamp on Go Fish and sort of helped people to take it more seriously,
So what is something that you would wish for the future of the Teddy Awards?
I would wish it a very happy birthday and keep on going. It's such a fun and hopeful movie, but I think it was born out of a sadness of losing people and of not understanding why the world wasn't looking or paying attention when we seem to be losing so many people. And so I think it was really about not wanting to take it anymore and wanting to be seen and heard. So it really came out of that.
So would you say that the gay rights movement in the early 90s, the new queer cinema and all that, is also a movement that came to be so strong because of the AIDS crisis?
Oh, I definitely think so. I definitely think so. I think we didn't really realize how. Hi, my name is Rose Troche, and I am the writer, director, producer, and editor of Go Fish, which won the Teddy Award in 1994, so way back in the day. And I want to wish the Teddy Awards a happy 30th birthday, and I wish I was there for the party. I could be there if you flew me out. So, and my little Teddy Award also says, happy birthday.
Well, Rose, thank you very much for doing this interview with us. Thank you very much for bringing the Teddy.
Yes, activism at that time. Like I was in ACT UP, I was in Queer Nation, as was Guinevere Turner, and I was also in film school. So I really wanted to kind of further the idea of like lesbian visibility, which we had, we did like kiss-ins, we did, like we were trying to, make ourselves more visible, and Go Fish definitely came out of that that philosophy. And as a matter of fact, I think if it weren't for ACT UP and Queer Nation, I don't know that film would have gotten made, because a lot of the people who helped make that film and worked on that film were all people that I met, in ACT UP and in Queer Nation. So it really kind of was a film that was born out of activism.
How would you describe the atmosphere at that time, the atmosphere of activism and the surrounding in which the movie came up?
I think it was very funny, because I was talking to Bob Hope last night. Bob Hawke, I'm sorry. I was talking to Bob Hawke last night, and we were talking about sort of the early '90s and just losing so many friends, and I think there was something about telling a simple story about the simplicity of love between two same-sex people that felt needed at the moment, and I think it definitely. I think this Teddy actually has nipples, so that's I just noticed that. That's very cute.
Well, we are Queer Film Awards, so we also have all genders in there.
Must have your nipples.
Yeah, well, you won the first Teddy Award in 1994 with Go Fish. Back at that time, new queer cinema was quite new still, and that was the first movie that actually depicted female homosexuality in a big movie. It won the award. How did the movie come to happen? How did you come up with the idea? What was the story behind it?
Go Fish really came out of